A flurry of state and local governments in the U.S. have enrolled public-owned forests in carbon projects. At first glance, it looks good. Big corporations and states working hand in hand to protect great swaths of forest. But the truth is, these deals provide little help in the fight against climate change, and claims of extra carbon removals are bogus.
These deals that are signed on public forests, they look good, they seem good on paper, they seem like it's a win-win situation for everyone. When you peel back the curtain, there's really nothing there, and it's not achieving what it is supposed to be achieving.
Professor Stephen Davis has examined the carbon credits allocated to public forests in the U.S.
Forests are working hard to remove carbon from the atmosphere, but they were doing that before the contract was signed. The goal of this is to reduce carbon, and I don't think that's happening in this case.
U.S. forest credits have been snapped up by companies trying to reach net zero emissions targets. J.P. Morgan Chase & Company paid almost $1 million to preserve forest in eastern Pennsylvania. 40 miles away, Walt Disney Company has spent hundreds of thousands to keep the city of Bethlehem from cutting down forest. And across state lines in New York, investment giant BlackRock Inc. paid thousands to the city of Albany to refrain from cutting trees around its reservoirs. But in all of these cases, the land was never threatened. The trees were already part of well-preserved forests.
So there's this threat that, logging was going to triple or quadruple. That's just not true. So for these credit companies say, we're assuring the future of that there won't be rapacious logging it's a kind of a vague and largely untrue assertion.
To actually make a difference, carbon offsets have to take more carbon out of the atmosphere or prevent more emissions than would otherwise have happened without them. This is called additionality. Without it, the credits are not offsetting anything.
If you confront the companies that sell these credits with that, they do one of two things. They go back to their models and they say, no, these are really good models. They've been approved by accreditation agencies, et cetera. And that's all true. But that's not the issue. The issue isn't the model they use to look at how much carbon is in the forests. The issue is whether or not an additional amount of carbon is being removed because of the exchange, because they sold carbon credits. And that is not happening.
Carbon credits are a nice earner for states. It's almost money for nothing. Credits are sold while forests are managed in the same way they've always been.
Counties and states, the public entities that own the forests are making some nice revenue streams from this, and it's helping their budgets. So a typical deal in Northwoods County in Wisconsin is for between $1 and $2 million a year for the first couple of years, the way the deal is structured, and then it drops to a couple $100,000 a year. And this, for a small county with a few tens or hundreds of thousands of people, is absolutely incredible source of revenue.
We are announcing the Climate Pledge.
On the other side of the deal, carbon offsets offer companies a cheap and easy way to buff their green credentials. Rather than dramatically change their operations, J.P. Morgan executives continue to jet around the globe. Disney's cruise ships still burn oil, and BlackRock's office buildings gobble up electricity. And although BlackRock says its carbon offsets are just part of its emissions plans, and J.P. Morgan contends it's seeking to better evaluate carbon credit quality, these companies are reducing nowhere near the pollution that they claim.
In practice, if those carbon offsets don't do that job, they're not reducing their emissions. So they're moving towards, or they're making claims of, carbon neutrality without actually achieving carbon neutrality. What that means is there's a false sense of progress. There's a false sense that we are collectively reducing or neutralizing our emissions when it's not in fact the case.
And if forestry offsets are dubious, they're not alone. There is mounting skepticism over whether the whole credits system is effective in reducing emissions. Bloomberg's analysis of more than 215,000 public offsets revealed that dozens of global brands rely heavily on the cheapest and most suspect type of offset, ones that provide no additional carbon removal. Another popular form of carbon offset credits supports solar and wind projects. Once again, it all looks good on paper, but experts consider these offsets largely worthless. The issue is timing. Many renewable offsets came into being just as solar and wind power became the cheapest source of energy in most countries. Selling offsets as a way to support renewables doesn't provide any benefit if it's already cheaper than coal or gas power. Basically, companies are claiming credit for something they had no effect on. But it's not all smoke and mirrors. This is the Orca plant, currently the world's largest carbon capture and storage facility. It gets its power from a geothermal plant next door. And the credits it sells are quantifiable. You know how much carbon is being taken, and you know it's going to be mineralized into the bedrock for hundreds of years. All good stuff. But carbon capture doesn't come anywhere close to moving the needle on climate change.
So that the challenge is enormous, right? Just to put it in perspective, so globally we currently emit 40 gigatons of CO2 per year. That's 40 billion tons. And depending on which scenario you look at, but we will have to remove, 6, 8, 10, maybe 15, maybe even 20 gigatons per year.
Climeworks, who operate this site, are working to scale up their plants, but let's put things in perspective. This site can remove 4,000 tons a year. The latest UN report estimates the equivalent of nearly 53 gigatons of carbon dioxide were released into the atmosphere in 2021, if you include all greenhouse gases. So, the most credible sector of the carbon offset market has almost no environmental impact. It's a rounding error. Thankfully, despite all the bad news, not everyone is pessimistic.
So I actually expected to retire at this time. I've been working on climate change now for about 2 decades, but this market just started growing in an unprecedented way. And if you've worked on climate change as long as I have, you've had this feeling over 2 decades that there's never been enough finance to tackle climate change, to tackle this climate crisis.
Last year, more than $1 billion worth of offsets were sold, and supporters believe the market could grow 50-fold by the end of the decade. That's a huge amount of money earmarked to fight climate change. Donna used to work for the U.S. State Department, where, among other duties, she served as a climate negotiator. Now, she's trying to clean up the carbon offset market by letting companies know which credits will make a difference and which are hot air.
And what we find is that there are good carbon projects. We believe that there are credits out there that are generating real additional emission reduction, but there are also some that are not. And again, I think what we need to see is this market mature. And I think over time, if it does, the market can be, in fact, a really powerful way to tackle climate change.
I know that the current voluntary market is far from perfect, but companies have started thinking about it. Okay, granted, some have probably done it for marketing reasons, but a lot of the companies, and we think, especially the companies we work with, spending several $100s per ton, that's not marketing anymore, that's being serious. And that is currently only possible in the voluntary market. So that's the good side of it.
The money flowing into the carbon offset market may not be making a significant difference yet. But supporters like Donna argue that with regulation and maturity, that money will make a difference soon.
Voluntary markets are, at the heart of it, additional action, right? So companies that are purchasing these credits are going beyond what they are required to do legally to tackle climate change. And clearly, governments are not moving fast enough. We need them to move faster, but we also need to have voluntary action, and we need to scale up voluntary action in addition to hopefully over time having policies and measures in place and pricing carbon. these companies that are getting involved in the market and that are really driving the scale that we're seeing today are doing so because either shareholders are demanding it, their employees are demanding it, or they feel the corporate social responsibility to do so. And I think that's really encouraging. So I'm hopeful that these markets can have a positive impact.